Hi there, I am the CRM Ninja, and on today's episode of the Oops Factor, I have Kevin McDonnell. Welcome to the show, Kevin.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Lovely to have you here. You have your own podcast, so I know that you are slightly familiar with the concept. It's unusual to be on the other side of the microphone.
I was just thinking the same thing, and I'm kind of known on the podcast. I'm the grey of the Grey Happy podcast, and I'm often making mistakes as I talk. And I just realised I said they're nice to meet you, which is ridiculous because we have met a few times at the Power Platform thing. So yeah, it's strange making the mistakes on the other side instead of the hosting side for a change.
That's fine, we are all human. So, viewers may wonder why my head is appearing on a uniform of somebody who is much larger than me in the background. I'm sort of replacing the tie. But the eagle-eyed people, I'm specifically using that, will spot that there's a certain gesture being made. And that gesture is that of the Cub Scouts. And I understand that you're a Cub Scout leader. Could you tell us a bit about it?
That's right. Yeah. What was it about? Just under 5 years ago now, my son was at Cubs, and they were saying they might have to close the pack, and I thought it was very sad. And they said they just needed more help. So I said, and it's a running joke between those in the Cub Scouts circles is they sort of say, yeah, just a couple of hours a week. That's all it'll be. And I said I can do every other week. After a little while, the leader at the time had to pull out, so I suddenly went from just helping out occasionally to running a pack, and yeah, I've been running it for about 2.5 years, and I absolutely love it. It was one of those things I just thought I very much, such as like with the community stuff, I love to pay it back and sort of put back into helping other people. And so I'd done Cubs and Scouts as a child, so I thought, yeah, don't really know anything, can't do knots, still not very good at knots if I'm honest, but you
They can
gradually
be quite
learn more and
naughty, I
more.
understand.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So I've kind of learned bits and pieces and love it, and it's been entertaining during lockdown. Got to use my skills with doing video meetings and things like that, and taught the Cubs a few things. And I try and bring in some of the stuff. I've taught them a little bit of Power Platform, not quite as much as I'd like because I couldn't get the licenses, but I managed to get 12 of them checking stuff into GitHub and doing pull requests into
Oh,
GitHub with things. So yeah, I've kind of taken the day job and brought that into things on there, and very very excited today. It's actually St George's Day, or the St George's Day parade. Usually we run, but of course everything's locked down at the moment. So we had an online version and found out that our Cub Pack was the most improved in the district, which was very exciting. So nice to be able to
congratulations.
celebrate occasionally. Thank you.
Is there a trophy or a rosette or something that you get for that?
There is. I've no idea how we're going to get it, whether they're going to drop it off with us or whether we just have to virtually pretend and hold it or something like that. But yeah, it's the Mickey Spearing Trophy. And I probably should know who Mickey Spearing is, but I have no idea either. So maybe that's my challenge to go and find out.
Not a problem. So, as leader of the pack, what do you say your responsibilities consist of mostly, and what do you enjoy doing the most?
Response to it now. I've been doing my training recently, so I should know the model answer to this. But basically, it's making sure there's a lot of health and safety, especially with COVID risk assessments. We're still keeping all the children 2 meters distance from each other, which is fun in itself. Making sure the parents know what's going on, keeping up with all the rotas and things, doing the planning for all the schedules, what we're going to do, trying to arrange summer camp, making sure all the subs are kept. But for me, and the thing I love most are the evenings itself, trying to come up with something fun, like we had just doing marshmallows over the fire, playing wide games outside, getting them running around and just seeing the smiling faces. And I blogged about this on the company blog a while back, because we were doing a thing about volunteering, and I had to run my first Cub camp, what was it, at the end of 2019, sort of. Unfortunately, it's been the only one since then because of COVID, but there was a moment there where one of the Cubs I've been helping for a little while, I looked around and he'd started doing some lashings and knots and had made a little shelter of his own, completely unprompted.
Wow.
And we hadn't done any lashings during that camp. It was all things he'd learned beforehand, and just that kind of moment of seeing him, seeing something that he might teach his kids. He'll go and learn from others, and that is what I love, is just seeing kids improve and see them get it's a really cheesy answer, and I'm sorry about that, but it really is seeing them kind of develop and come on, and yeah, it's really good to see.
It is indeed. Now, admittedly, I never did Cubs or Scouts, which is the more grown-up version of Cubs. But I do subscribe to a maxim in life about things moving or not, because obviously in the Cubs and Scouts you learn all sorts of different knots to hold things in place. Where I just use duct tape. Now, do you ever take duct tape with you just in case the knots don't hold and the rope doesn't hold? I'm really curious.
If anyone from Scouts is listening, absolutely not. Everyone else, of course I do. And I have been known to put a bit of duct tape, then wrap some rope around it so no one can see that as well. That's definite. Just to make sure when you're doing those demo ones, you want to make sure they stick together. You know, it's the old smoke and mirrors that we all do in technology and demoing stuff. It's make sure it works and then show them the pretty stuff on top. Yeah, I carry duct tape where I am most of the time, to be honest. It's always helpful.
Duct tape is very important. I just had 12 rolls turn up today. Couple of different colours.
Wow.
So yeah,
you do get through a lot of duct tape.
I do get through a lot of duct tape, yes. But we've been reading one garden and moving boxes backwards and forwards and a variety of other stuff. So yeah,
right.
I use duct tape for it.
This isn't a form of babysitting or anything like that, is it? They just
sort of no.
No,
that's no. I don't believe in duct taping the kids up on the wall. No. I have other things that I would.
At Cubs. We did toy with doing that genuinely at Cubs once, but we were advised it probably wasn't the best of ideas. So yeah, we had to change that back.
It probably violates one of the small prints in the health and safety maxim somewhere.
And the large prints as well, I think, on that one.
Possibly. So from talk about the Cubs and duct tape and ropes to the oops factor, what do you have to share with us today?
So I was kind of pondering a little while back on this, and I think there's two big ones. One was a fairly small minor event in theory, where it was many moons back, not long after I would become a graduate. I started out in financial services and was learning the trade, and very much financial services, you're thrown in the deep end, told to get on with things, not given much support, and crack on with it. And I was running a lovely database script, hit go, and had that just white pale moment of realization that that table I just dropped wasn't the one in test environment. I had connected to live, because it was back in the days when we didn't change with different accounts and didn't make sure we kept things separately. So I think that's probably my most memorable one, because I've always made sure that I only ever have production access to things when I absolutely need it. And if I do, I try and use different colors, different accounts, so that you know you're in that different environment, make it fairly obvious. So I think as an oops factor goes of things I remember, that's probably my biggest. It was one tiny little moment, clicking that F5 go, and that sudden plummet and realization, that feeling in the pit of your stomach that suddenly builds and builds on there.
Was there a backup in place?
No, there wasn't. So we had to recreate that table. That wasn't my fault, the backup. That was someone else's. I should say there should have been a backup, but it didn't work. So we had to go back to, I think we managed to go back to the UAT system, pull most of the data from there, pull together some of the other ones, but it wasn't good. It wasn't as bad as it could have been, but it wasn't a good moment. And there's a kind of younger person in the team, you just feel awful for things, and you've got users phoning up all over the place. So took quite a bit of moment, and yeah, I'd say I learned a fair bit from that one.
Okay.
But I think a more recent one, because I think things with the oops factor is we carry on doing it through our career. And if anyone says they don't, they're lying and trying to hide things from you, or they don't do enough proper work. So I think you
absolutely agree on that
mistakes. One. And I think a recent one, a big project we've been working on, a huge migration for a client. And maybe it's not that oops, it's not that sudden moment, but it's been going on and on and on. And I keep thinking it's going to finish, and I'm probably still too optimistic around it. I still think that things are going to stop going wrong, and we're going to stop encountering strange issues with it.
When you say things keep going wrong, are there a lot of things that are going wrong?
Yes, I think is the short. We just keep encountering different elements. I don't know if you've done migrations. I don't know if it's the same in the dynamic space, but certainly in the SharePoint space, migration is just painful, because certainly when you're talking about terabytes of data, there's so many different elements that can be within there that you didn't expect, and things you hit, especially if you within SharePoint, it's quite easy to go above limits with it, where it won't actually stop you, but it suddenly becomes very painful to do things. And scaling anything up to that degree is there's just always things that you hit, and you make one assumption and it's not right. You make another assumption that turns out to not be right, but it can be a little way down the line before you hit that. And I think it's taught me. I know Al Erdley. I've been working with
Yeah.
on at CPS and working with him there, and he's taught me plenty of sort of making sure you put in your validation, and then you validate your validation, and you also get something else that validates that. Having your different checks in place and trying to make things you do properly. So I think plenty of learning from that as well.
So if you had another project to go on at a similar scale, with terabytes of data around SharePoint and stuff, and for the benefits of the viewers, I have done a small amount in the SharePoint space, nothing major, nothing there, but in the office, in the SharePoint space, I have dabbled occasionally. How would you mitigate, based on especially what you've learned in this recent project, going forward? What sort of things would you put in place to try and ensure that it works as smoothly as possible?
I think the biggest oops I did with this one was agreeing to things in the first place that we said it will probably be okay, because we'd done a small scale test on things, and that worked okay, and we kind of assumed that the thing would scale up. I mean, they say assumptions the mother of all. I wouldn't say the last
Screw ups.
but screw ups. That's the word I'm looking for. Thank you. But yeah, I wouldn't make that assumption, and I would be a lot more diligent and say, you know what, if Microsoft says this isn't best practice, there's a reason they say it's not best practice, because they've had the experience of doing these things, and you're bound to get all sorts of very strange things happening, and not being assuming that, yeah, okay, we'll find ways around that, whatever does come up. Don't assume that. Build in the time for it, and try and fix as many things up front before you start moving stuff. And when you start moving stuff, track things as you're going along as well, which we did to a certain degree, but not to the level that was useful, in that when it started going wrong, we didn't know.
So when you say track, what do you mean by tracking?
So if you're moving a load of content across, when you've moved that bit of content, check and say, right, we've moved 1,000 files. When this is finished, there should be 1,000 files there, and do that on a regular basis. So you should know number of files that are moving per day, and be able to count those and see those on there, and have the scripts and validations. So again, it's that validation. Don't just wait to the end. Do it as you're going along as well, because that way, if there's a problem, you can solve it when the problem starts, not when you get to the end and realize that nothing's moved across as you thought it would.
Yeah, and that is true for lots of systems, not just SharePoint ones. Important to ensure as you go along, you run checks on as larger sample as possible,
and I'd also say with
you
it,
do checks.
Use other people. Don't try and take on too much yourself. It's
very important.
Many people love to just go and do things themselves because you kind of think it's easier, but there's two things about getting other people to help you. One, you've got other people to help you, but two, in the process of telling other people what you're doing, you're more likely either you or they will find the problems that go on with it as well. So
that is true.
Only reminded that we often forget this, but I think the general reminder to do that more often is always good.
It's always useful to have that second set of eyes, even if they're just validating what you're doing, and confirming it. Because we all get the feeling that sometimes, do we actually know what we're doing? Do we know what we're saying? Do we know what we're implementing? Having somebody else say, yeah, actually, that looks right, can be helpful and useful.
I think also the act of telling people things, you slow down yourself enough, whereas you're just looking at things, your brain goes 100 miles an hour and goes all over the place. That act of telling people, poor Gary Trinder, the beard of grey hat beard, the number of times I've had a dev problem, I've been chatting to him, trying to get him to help me out, and I just can talk through it, and he doesn't have to say anything, because I just see it. When you click here, and actually when I do that, oh, hang on, now I've done that. That's where the problem is. So he just sits there kind of going, and nodding away, nodding and looking, and I often answer by myself. And I've tried time and time again. I've had this throughout my career. Time and time again, I've tried to pretend there's someone else there, literally pretend there's someone I'm talking to. And it's just not the same as having someone there listening to it. So
it's not the same. And other people may start looking at you strangely when you're in a room with them. You just start talking out loud to a random person, invisible.
Yeah, well, yes, they often do that. But thankfully, we're all working at home, so it's a lot easier that way.
Indeed it is. Brilliant. That's some really valuable lessons there.
Yes, I when I started these lessons, I had more hair. Some of it wasn't grey. So yeah, these lessons have been learnt through many years of hair pulling out and going grey. So
Yeah, I hear. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate your time with us.
no problem at all. Thank you very much.
Great pleasure. Viewers, we hope that you've enjoyed this episode. Feel free to check out the rest of the Oops Factor playlist, subscribe to the channel, and take a look at the blog. And if you would like to come on the show and share your own experiences, hit the link in the description, fill in your details, and I'll drop you a line to get you on. But above all, have a wonderful day.